A beloved small-town teacher and former beauty queen disappears after a Saturday night out. Her car is left behind, her purse untouched, and a single latex glove lies in the yard. For over a decade, no one knew what happened. When her remains were finally uncovered, shocking confessions surfaced. But to this day, the question lingers: who truly killed Tara Grinstead? On an ordinary Saturday night in the fall of 2005, a 30-year-old woman left a barbecue in the small town of Ocilla, Georgia. Her name was Tara Grinstead. To her students, she was more than a high school history teacher. She was a mentor, a role model, even a friend. In the community, she was admired as a former beauty queen, someone who seemed to embody both grace and resilience. But by Monday morning, Tara would be gone, and her absence would trigger one of the largest investigations in the state's history. The last confirmed sighting of Tara was around 11 p.m. when she left that barbecue to head home. What followed was silence. No phone calls, no text messages, no signs of life. On Monday, when she failed to appear at school, colleagues grew concerned. Police were dispatched to her house, where they found a scene that was deeply unsettling. Her car, a white Mitsubishi, sat parked outside, unlocked. Inside the home, her purse and phone were left behind, as if she had simply stepped out for a moment. The door was locked, the bedside lamp shattered, and in the yard, a single latex glove, an item that would haunt investigators for years. The discovery raised more questions than answers. How could someone so well known in a tight-knit town vanish without a trace? Detectives, volunteers, and even national media descended upon Ocilla. For weeks, search parties combed through fields, rivers, and wooded areas. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Helicopters scanned from above, yet nothing was found. It was as if Tara had dissolved into thin air. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the community's fear deepened. Parents locked their doors, rumors spread, and every man in town seemed to fall under suspicion. Still, there were no arrests, no leads that held weight. The latex glove, collected and stored, would not yield immediate answers. The case grew cold, but the silence surrounding Tara's disappearance only amplified the mystery. And so, the question lingered. What happened in the dark hours after Tara left that party? Someone knew. Someone had to know. The longer investigators searched without results, the more Tara's disappearance began to feel like a cruel puzzle with missing pieces. Neighbors remembered the young teacher as warm, dependable, the kind of person who would never vanish on her own. Yet every detail from her home painted a chilling picture. A locked door with no forced entry. A car left outside, keys missing. A purse and phone abandoned. It looked less like a woman walking away from her life and more like someone had forced her into silence. For weeks, the case consumed Georgia's headlines. Flyers were taped to storefront windows, candlelight vigils were held, and volunteers combed through farmland, mile after mile. The state poured resources into what quickly became one of its largest missing person investigations. And still, nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no sign of a struggle that could point to who had been there with her that night. The latex glove was the one haunting clue. Found in the yard, lying almost casually, it suggested a presence that did not belong. Investigators collected it, sealed it, and hoped science would one day catch up. But in 2005, DNA testing was not as advanced as it is now. And without a direct suspect, the glove was a question mark more than an answer. As months passed, whispers in the town grew louder. Some wondered if Tara had left with someone she trusted. Others feared she had been stalked. Theories spread like wildfire, but evidence remained painfully thin. To the outside world, Ocilla seemed peaceful, quiet, just another southern town. Inside, though, fear settled over its people. Everyone wanted to know who had taken Tara, and whether that person was still walking freely among them. Years would pass with no breakthrough. But the silence did not erase the memory of the young teacher. Her story lingered in classrooms she once filled, in the halls of beauty pageants she once mentored, and in the hearts of friends who never stopped asking, "Where is Tara?" As the months slipped into years, Tara's disappearance transformed from a breaking news story into a haunting cold case. Detectives pursued every tip, but leads dried up. Each time a possible suspect surfaced, the trail quickly dissolved. Friends and family clung to hope, yet they also endured the heavy silence of not knowing. The image of Tara's smiling face on missing person posters faded in the sun, but the ache of her absence only grew stronger. Behind the scenes, investigators never stopped working. Files thickened with interviews, dead ends, and theories. They returned again and again to that latex glove, the most physical clue left behind. It was tested, retested, and preserved, but without a match, it could not point to anyone with certainty. Forensic technology was improving, but in the early years, it wasn't enough to unlock the secret hidden inside. The case became the subject of late-night conversations and local speculation. Small towns are not places where secrets hide easily, and yet, this one did. People asked, was it someone she knew? A stranger passing through, or someone close enough to walk right into her home? Theories filled the void, but no evidence could answer them. Over time, the case drew the attention of national true crime shows and amateur sleuths on internet forums. Still, each wave of renewed interest ended the same way, with no resolution. For more than a decade, Tara's story was frozen in uncertainty. Parents warned their children to lock doors, women in the community became more cautious, and the once ordinary house on West Park Street stood as a grim reminder of a life interrupted. Yet, even as the years stretched on, one truth remained. Someone knew what happened that night. The silence was not the absence of answers, but the presence of a secret waiting to be told. And when that secret finally surfaced, it would come not from police work, but from a confession whispered in confidence. One that would reopen the darkest chapter in Ocilla's history. For more than 11 years, Tara's case lay frozen in silence. A puzzle that refused to give up its answer. Then, in February of 2017, the walls of secrecy began to crack. The breakthrough did not come from new forensic testing or a sudden discovery of evidence. It came from a voice, an unexpected confession whispered to someone who could no longer keep the secret. A young woman named Brooke Sheridan stepped forward to authorities. She told investigators that her former boyfriend, Bo Dukes, had revealed a terrible truth to her. According to Brooke, Bo confessed that he and his friend, Ryan Duke, had been involved in covering up Tara's death. He told her they had destroyed her body in the woods of a pecan orchard belonging to his family. It was a confession so chilling that Brooke felt she had no choice but to go to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Soon after, Ryan Duke, a former student at the very high school where Tara once taught, was arrested. When questioned by investigators, Ryan admitted that he had broken into Tara's home, intending to steal money. He claimed that when Tara caught him, panic overtook him, and he struck her, ending her life. According to his statement, he carried her body away and later, with Bo's help, destroyed the remains in a fire on the orchard property. The story shocked the town. After years of speculation, the names of real people, familiar faces, were suddenly linked to the crime. It wasn't the faceless stranger many had feared, but men from the community. Young men who had once walked the same streets and hallways as Tara herself. Investigators descended on the pecan farm. They searched the soil, digging for fragments of truth. What they found were bone fragments and teeth, burned and broken, buried deep in the earth. Forensic testing confirmed what many had both dreaded and prayed for. The remains belonged to Tara Grinstead. After more than a decade, the mystery of whether she was alive was finally answered. But the discovery, instead of bringing closure, only deepened the questions. Ryan had confessed, but soon, his story would begin to change. At first, Ryan Duke's confession seemed to offer a clear ending to a mystery that had haunted Osceola for over a decade. He admitted to the break-in, the sudden act of violence, and to carrying Tara's body away. For investigators, and for Tara's family, the story was shocking, but at least it was an explanation. Yet the truth, as it turned out, would not settle so easily. When Ryan's case moved toward trial, everything began to shift. He recanted much of his original confession, claiming that fear and confusion had led him to say what investigators wanted to hear. Now he insisted he was not the one who killed Tara. Instead, he pointed the blame squarely at Bo Dukes. According to Ryan's new account, he had been asleep in his truck the night Tara vanished. When he woke, Bo told him that he had killed her and demanded Ryan's help to dispose of the body. Ryan claimed that out of fear of Bo, he went along with the cover-up, but he was not the killer himself. The reversal sent the case spiraling into uncertainty. A confession that had once sounded like closure was now a tangled knot of shifting stories. Defense attorneys argued that Ryan's words had been coerced, that investigators had leaned too heavily on his initial admission without stronger evidence to back it up. Prosecutors, meanwhile, insisted that Ryan's first statement was the truth, that he had acted alone, panicked, and tried to hide his crime with Bo's assistance. For the public, the confusion was maddening. After years of silence, the long-awaited arrests did not deliver the clarity everyone had hoped for. Instead, Tara's case became even more clouded by contradiction. 2 men were tied to her death, 2 men connected by secrets and fire. Yet each story clashed with the other. Through it all, one fact remained beyond dispute. Tara had been killed, her body reduced to fragments and ash in a pecan orchard. But as the trial loomed, the central question became more elusive than ever. Was Ryan truly the one who ended her life? Or had he been pulled into a nightmare he hadn't started? When Ryan Duke finally stood trial, the courtroom became the stage for a story that had already twisted in every possible direction. Prosecutors entered, determined to prove that Ryan was the one who killed Tara. They leaned heavily on his original confession, the statement in which he described breaking into her home, panicking, and striking her. They argued that no one would admit to such details unless it were true. The latex glove, collected years earlier from Tara's yard, was presented again as a silent witness, containing DNA that pointed toward Ryan. But the defense countered with equal force. They reminded the jury that confessions are not always reliable, especially when given under stress, fear, or pressure from investigators. They played Ryan's recantation as the real story, the one he claimed he had been too frightened to tell before. According to this version, it was Bo Dukes who had taken Tara's life, and Ryan's role was limited to helping conceal the body. The trial pulled in years of grief and speculation. Witnesses testified about Ryan and Bo, their connections to Tara, their behavior after her disappearance. Family and friends sat in the gallery, forced to relive details they had carried for over a decade. Every testimony, every piece of evidence seemed to raise as many doubts as it did answers. Meanwhile, Bo Dukes faced his own charges, but not for murder. He was prosecuted for helping hide Tara's body and for lying to investigators. His sentence? 25 years in prison. To many, this outcome felt incomplete. If Ryan was not guilty of killing Tara, then why wasn't Bo charged with the murder? If Ryan was guilty, why did his story unravel so easily under cross-examination? The jury faced an impossible task: decide who was telling the truth in a case built on burned remains, conflicting statements, and a community still aching for resolution. At its heart, the trial revealed the limits of the justice system when the evidence is as fragile as ash. The only certainty was that Tara had been taken from the world too soon. And yet, after years of waiting, the question of who truly killed her remained clouded in doubt. After days of testimony and hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict that would stun many who had followed the case for nearly 2 decades. Ryan Duke was found not guilty of murder. For the jurors, the contradictions in his statements, the lack of direct physical evidence, and the uncertainty about what truly happened inside Tara's home created too much doubt. The law required proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and in this case, the gaps were too wide to bridge. But the verdict did not free Ryan entirely. The jury convicted him of concealing Tara's death. He admitted he helped move and destroy her remains, and for that, he was held accountable. It was a strange split: guilty of covering up the crime, yet not guilty of committing it. To Tara's family and to the community, the outcome felt like a bitter half-truth. Justice had spoken, but it did not deliver the closure they had waited 17 years to hear. Meanwhile, Bo Duke sat in prison on his own charges, sentenced to 25 years for helping hide the body and for misleading investigators. Yet he was never charged with Tara's murder. The courtroom drama had ended, but the central mystery had not. 2 men were tied to the destruction of her remains. Both had confessed to some role in the aftermath, yet the question of who struck the fatal blow remained unanswered. The verdict forced the public to confront an uncomfortable reality. Sometimes, the justice system can only go as far as the evidence allows. Without a clear timeline, without witnesses, and with stories that contradicted each other, the truth about that night remained locked away. The family left the courthouse knowing what they had known all along: that Tara was gone, that her body had been found in ashes, but still not knowing who, beyond doubt, had taken her life. For a case that had consumed so much attention, the ending felt hollow. In the courtroom, the trial was over. In the hearts of those who loved Tara, the story was far from finished. When the trial ended, Oscilla was left with a mix of exhaustion and disbelief. 17 years had passed since Tara vanished, and yet the central question still had no answer. People gathered in church halls and living rooms, shaking their heads at the outcome. The case that had once united the community in grief now left many feeling divided, unsure of whether justice had truly been served. For Tara's family, the verdict was especially heavy. They had endured the long wait for answers, the endless speculation, and finally, the painful details revealed in court. Now, after everything, they were left with a hollow victory. 2 men convicted of helping hide Tara's body, but no one officially named as her killer. It was closure in the most technical sense, but not in the way that heals the heart. In Oscilla, fear gradually gave way to frustration. Residents remembered how, for more than a decade, rumors swirled around nearly everyone connected to Tara. Neighbors had suspected neighbors. Friendships had fractured under the weight of whispers. When Ryan and Bo were arrested, many thought the mystery would finally be resolved. Instead, the unanswered questions only deepened. Nationally, the case continued to draw attention. True crime podcasts, documentaries, and news specials revisited the story, turning Tara's disappearance into a cautionary tale about how fragile the pursuit of justice can be when evidence is scarce and memories conflict. Yet beyond the headlines, the reality remained simple. A young woman's life had been taken, her body destroyed, and no court had ever determined who was responsible for the act itself. Still, Tara's memory lingered in the places she had touched. Former students spoke about the encouragement she had given them, how she inspired them to chase goals they thought were out of reach. In beauty pageants, her name was remembered as a mentor who had given her time to help young women find their confidence. Even as the legal process failed to provide full justice, her influence lived on quietly, woven into the lives she had shaped. The story did not end with the trial, because in Osceola, and for all who followed, the absence of truth left a shadow that time could not erase. Years after the verdict, Tara's case still lingers in conversations, in podcasts, and in the quiet memories of those who knew her. What makes it so haunting is not only the brutality of her death, but the way the truth has remained just out of reach. Two men admitted to playing roles in the destruction of her body, yet the question of who took her life has never been answered in a court of law. It's the kind of unresolved ending that leaves people uneasy, because it suggests that justice can remain incomplete, even when evidence is uncovered. The story also exposes the limits of forensic science and the fragility of human testimony. Burned remains tell only fragments of the truth. Confessions, once thought to be solid, can unravel under pressure or change depending on fear, loyalty, or self-preservation. When there are no witnesses, no clear timeline, and only two men pointing fingers at each other, the law struggles to assign guilt with certainty. The result is what we saw in Tara's case: partial accountability without a clear sense of closure. For the community, the case is more than a tragedy. It's a reminder of how suspicion can erode trust. Over the years, nearly everyone connected to Tara felt the weight of being questioned, judged, or whispered about. In a small town, that kind of suspicion lingers long after the headlines fade. Families carry it, friendships change, and the scars run deep. Yet, Tara's legacy is not defined only by her disappearance. People remember her laugh, her dedication to her students, her willingness to mentor young women on their own paths. In that sense, the story is not only about loss, but also about impact, the way one life can ripple through so many others. Even as the case remains unresolved, Tara's influence continues quietly in the people she inspired. The haunting part is this: the true killer may never face the weight of justice. And that question, unanswered, is what keeps Tara's story alive in the minds of so many who still wonder what really happened that October night. The story of Tara Grinstead does not end with a single verdict or a headline declaring the case solved. Instead, it ends in fragments, like the evidence itself. Pieces of truth scattered across confessions, courtroom battles, and unanswered questions. Her name became part of one of Georgia's most notorious mysteries, a case that highlighted both the persistence of investigators and the painful limits of the justice system. For Tara's family, the years of waiting were marked by hope, heartbreak, and the quiet strength required to keep her memory alive. They held vigils, they kept her picture visible, and they spoke her name so that she would not be forgotten. In many ways, that persistence kept the case in the public eye long enough for answers, however partial, to finally emerge. For the community of Osceola, the case left scars that may never fade. A small town bound by familiarity was forced to reckon with the possibility that danger had come not from outside, but from within. It left people wary, questioning who they could trust, and whether true justice was even possible when so much had been lost to time. And for the rest of us who hear her story, Tara's case is a reminder of how fragile truth can be. A single night can alter countless lives. And when evidence is burned, hidden, or destroyed, sometimes the answers never fully return. Yet what remains is her life, the teacher who inspired her students, the mentor who guided young women, the daughter and friend who is still deeply missed. In the end, Tara's legacy is larger than the crime that took her. She is remembered for the lives she touched, not just the tragedy that surrounds her name. But the haunting question will always remain, echoing long after the courtroom lights dimmed. Who really killed Tara Grinstead? And why, after all these years, has that truth never been fully revealed? If this story gripped you, don't forget to like the video. Leave a comment with your thoughts on who you believe is truly responsible, and subscribe so you don't miss more true crime storytelling like this. Your support helps keep these stories alive.